Welcome to the ACEVEDO video store. Today we are going to review Firecracker from 1981, directed, produced, co-written by Cirio H. Santiago, I'm hoping I get the first name right, for its 45th anniversary. The story is about Susan, played by Jillian Kinser Graver. She arrives in the Philippines in the search of her missing sister. She's roped into learning about this group who runs this kumite type of tournament. That group is also secretly smuggling drugs into the country as well. So Susan ends up breaking into this drug ring, which leads her to closer to find out what happened to her sister. That's the basic story of the film. I really enjoyed it. Somewhat above decent martial arts film. I should mention that this movie is technically a remake of a previous Santiago production, TNT Jackson from 1974, written by Ken Metcalf and then rewritten by Dick Miller before they started filming. But Ken Metcalf was the one who came up with the story, and hence why for Firecracker, it seems to be partly rewritten or co-written by Santiago. The story is, although very cliched, I see this with other martial arts movies. I now kind of recognize it, which is that we have this story where a martial artist walks into a new place, could be a town, could be a country, could be anywhere, and then they're looking for somebody, and somehow they end up in a situation where they'll figure out who the person was, whether they're alive or dead, and get into a lot of fights afterwards. You see something like that in a movie like Bruce Lee Fights Back from the Grave. And as it being a remake, it's very kind of one-to-one. It's kind of a checklist type of thing where they kept everything the same, but changed things slightly for every single scene and all that.
I'm a government agent.
Oh, yeah? Narcotics Division, Anti-Narcotics Unit.
You're Diana Jackson.
And you're Susanna Carter.
Age 24, born in Harlem, alias TNT Jackson.
Born October 17, Augusta, Georgia.
You are a lousy stinking pig.
But Firecracker, in my opinion, is a slightly better movie. The cinematography is actually much more better and seem a little bit more planned out than TNT Jackson. Because TNT Jackson's, there are one too many out of focus shots that I was so confused by. It's why they're here. Firecracker, you don't see that much of them. You actually see some thought put into cinematography, but the slightly soft focus or out of focus shots kind of seep into the film in a few areas. The fight choreography is pretty well done. I'm actually kind of surprised that researching this film, Jillian Kinser wasn't too knowledgeable about martial arts before getting into the film. In fact, she actually studied a lot to prepare for herself for Firecracker, which I actually kind of find surprising. And she did a pretty good job in terms of fight choreography in the movies. I think a few of the action scenes could have been choreographed better, or maybe could have been expanded to be more interesting. For example, Susan is trying to discover more about the drug gang, and then she meets up with a cop lady, but she doesn't know that because she just hops on a motorbike and starts running away. And my immediate sounds oh, would it be like the Cameroon Connection bike scene? But no, it just really ends under 30 seconds where somehow Susan topples over and falls off the bike. But at least you got pretty neat fight scenes, some neat kills and all that, especially towards the end. Spoiler warning, but in the end of the movie, Susan kills Chuck with these two sticks that go directly into his eyes. When I was doing this research, I found this documentary, Machete Maidens. It's been on my watch list for a while, but it's basically about exploitation films being made in the Philippines. And the actor who plays Chuck talks about how the Filipino crew wanted him with those sticks on top of his eyes, actually, and not a mannequin in place for him. And he was no, test this out and all that. So they tested out on a mannequin, and the sticks get stuck, and they're just shoving in, shoving out, trying to let loose of the sticks. So for that last shot where the sticks get into his eyes and they're pop off and all of that, that was through a mannequin. The characters are pretty two-dimensional bare bones, and they kind of have weird character perks, which I kind of don't understand. Susan's and Chuck's love relationship with each other. There's not really much of a setup on why would they have interest with each other. Although I'm not really much a big fan of TNT Jackson, it does have one of my favorite characters, which is Joe the martial artist. I'm so disappointed to know that there's not a similar character to Joe in Firecracker. There is a similar character type as oh, I'm the guy who knows what happened to your sister, and I've been in contact with her, but I don't know where she is type of character. But it's not Joe the martial artist, which has some sense of humor to that role as well, which I think would make Firecracker a slightly better movie. With this film, you do get a memorable cast. Firstly, Gillian Kinser and all that, which I'm more familiar with her through her husband, Gary Graver, who was Orson Welles' cinematographer up until Welles' death in 1985. In fact, she was later called to be one of the members of VISTO, which stands for Volunteers in the Service of Orson Welles, basically trying to help Orson Welles to finish The Other Side of the Wind. She unfortunately passed away in 2007, a year after Gary Graver died. Another two actors that I'm kind of familiar with are Ray Malazano. He started his career as a Bruceploitation actor in The Golden Chaku, where he was Bruce Ly, L-Y. But a year later, he did another Bruceploitation movie, Bruce Lit, with Raymond Mazzaro under his real name. And there's also Vic Diaz, also another prolific Filipino actor, appearing in a lot of Santiago movies and a lot of Corman Filipino films as well. The three of them and a few cast members, crew members, will later work on a year later on Raw Force. I don't really have much comments on the pacing because it's a really short movie. It's literally under an hour and 20 minutes. There isn't a lot of padding to make it longer. The soundtrack is pretty good. It's mostly reused tracks from Shogun Assassin, surprisingly. Partly the reason they were able to do this is because Roger Corman, the distributor he previously distributed Shogun Assassin, which was a re-edit of the first two Lone Wolf and Cub movies. So I'm presuming Corman just had some leeway. It's we already have music for the film. Overall, I will give this movie 3.6 out of 5 stars. Now, I only own this on DVD, as you see here. It's in the Lethal Ladies collection. I believe this is actually volume 1. This features all Roger Corman productions, Firecracker, its original film, TNC Jackson, and Too Hot to Handle, which is, I read the back here, another Filipino production, but I haven't seen it yet. Split into 2 discs, TNC Jackson and Firecracker share the same disc. If you're wondering, because Firecracker appears first and TNC Jackson in the middle, when you open the DVD menu, it's the first selected movie is TNC Jackson, and the next one being Firecracker. Bonus features besides the trailer to Firecracker. Surprisingly, there's no trailer for TNC Jackson on this, which is weird, but there is a trailers to a bunch of Filipino Roger Corman Santiago productions. And Too Hot to Handle is on its own disc, which features an audio commentary with star Cherry Carfaro. I find these Filipino Roger Corman productions to be pretty interesting, and because a lot of those Corman films are shot in the Philippines as well. I think the main reason is the fact that the Philippines had cheaper rates in terms of paying actors and crew. So some of these movies will have low budgets as $100,000, not even much above it. I was pretty happy to find a documentary, Machete Maidens, which I saw 1 hour of it, not the entire film, just 1 hour of it. I was skimming for the parts where they talk about Cirio, Santiago, and Firecracker, which there is a small segment with Firecracker, but I watched, I think from the 30-minute mark until all the way to its credits. So basically that's where it started, where they're really talking about Roger Corman coming into the picture, and after they made their these women in prison films in the Philippines, they started doing more action films. That's where Santiago comes into the picture. And during research, I realized I actually owned one of Santiago's movies, which I did not know. It's in this 5 Films, 5 Years, Volume 2. This is from Vinegar Syndrome, and when they were doing these Blu-ray sets, it's essentially stuff they put out on DVD. According to them, couldn't justify the expense of re-releasing it on its own as its standalone Blu-ray release. So they kind of put these in these packages, 5 Films, 5 Years for their 5th anniversary. The Mothers is the one by Santiago from 76. Oh, 76, 2026, might as well review it. Which I've heard this one is the better Santiago films because it's more action-packed and less slow and not out of focus. Well, maybe he's out of focus here and there, because looking into the documentary Machete Maidens, they talk about how the reactions from these people from New World Pictures, Roger Corman and the editors, they talk about that when Santiago came into the pictures, there was no guarantee that the movies were going to be good. And they always come in very rough, very scratchy film prints, out of focus shots, terrible camera work. I think my favorite thing about that documentary, it mentions how they noted a film scratch was possibly from claw marks of an animal. And apparently, according to one of the editors, Corman would get angrier and angrier with every Santiago screening of a film directed by him, to the point that they had to shoot new scenes in order to make a better movie out of it. Which Firecracker does have an additional director credit from a second unit, but I wonder what scenes they filmed for that second unit. Initially, I thought it could have been the opening scene where we actually see firecrackers going off. I wonder if it's like, maybe the famous like panty-clad chase scene with Jillian Kinster. And the documentary Michelle made is also get into like the political climate on how these films were being made, how like safety guidelines weren't really a thing. You're going to get punched, you're going to get punched for real. You're going to fall off this building. Hopefully you land on those boxes. Oh, car's going to hit you, and you better hope you jump in time before the car slams against your body. That type of stuff, which is insane. When I was looking at Santiago's filmography, I was looking at sort of Letterboxd and decided like, oh, what's his worst rated movies? And I realized, what are the worst rated Filipino movies on Letterboxd? The first one being a Steven Seagal movie. Second one being the most infamous one from Santiago's career, Vampire Hookers. The worst rated Filipino movies on Letterboxd and IMDb usually tends to be movies produced in the last 10-15 years. A few of them on Netflix especially, whether being romance comedies or dramas. But I really wanted to make a case study that Santiago could be the worst filmmaker of the Philippines because of that Letterboxd ratings. But now thinking about it, I think there's probably worse filmmakers in the Philippines than Santiago. Overall, I'd say it's a pretty decent movie. I do recommend checking out if you're interested in watching it. This is so far the only home video release I know of the film. The movie does go under a different title, Naked Fist, but I think that's for just other territories or oddball foreign VHS releases outside of the US. Maybe, hopefully, we might get a Blu-ray release and all that, because I believe Shout Factory still retains the rights to the large library of the Corman films from New World Pictures. So maybe they might give this a re-release, Lethal Ladies, the Blu-ray edition. And probably I'll watch The Mothers after I finish this review. So that's all the review. Have a nice day, and later on come back to our video store.